In the first portion of this tutorial, I showed how to go from a shot like this of a car driving down a road to a clean plate version of it where the car has been removed. Now in the second portion, we're going to show how to go back and produce the texture for the car as well. So to do that, we're going to start out in the camera view and we're going to do a little tracking. So we're going to go back and create the same tracker right here on this back window and let that run through the shot. Now, if we had a lot of perspective changes in this shot, we could go and do several supervised trackers, maybe in the order of 6 to 10, and produce a 3D path for the car. If we had a nice 3D model for the car, we could use that also to help drive the mesh extraction and the pathfinding process. But in this particular shot, there aren't really any perspective changes to really work from. So we're going to use an approach that's based on just the single tracker here. So we've got that tracker. Let's go take a look in the quad view. Here's the situation. We've got the camera moving. We've got this whole cloud of far trackers out there, and those are really just directions because we don't have any distances because this is just a tripod mode solve that we have due to the motion of the camera. And in front of those, there's a backdrop here, and that's what we computed in the first particular tutorial. So what we're going to do now is create, using this tracker, a moving object in this area here that's just at a fixed distance from the camera. So there's a script to do that, make object from tracker, and we're going to set the distance here to be about 60 units. This is, the camera itself is at -80, so the 60 is going to put it around here. The key point is that we want to make sure this object is in front of the backdrop here, because when we create the geometry for this car, we want to make sure that in 3D the car is in front of the backdrop. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to see what we did ultimately. So this script has two different modes. One that we're using that orients the moving object directly towards the camera the whole time. And the pivot mode is better for something like a pole that stays upright. And that mode always just pivots the object while maintaining its same vertical axis. So we're going to run that script now. And now you'll see the green null moving throughout the scene. And it's nicely in front of the backdrop behind it. So the next portion is we want to create a mesh that is parented to this null. So we're going to go and make the active object be that new tracker object that we just created. And we have two different ways to add geometry attached to that mesh. One would be to go to the 3D panel and select the object coordinate modes. So we're now, these views are actually showing the object's coordinate system. And so we could just go and create a plane right in that coordinate system. The other way to go is to go over to the perspective view and use the grid there to do it. So we're going to actually do it in the perspective view to show a few more interesting things. First, we're going to go and hide the texture that we created before because it's just in the way of things. We'll also go to the perspective settings, and we're just going to ratchet down the size of that null so that it doesn't get in the way of things. Now right now the creation grid in this perspective window is set to be the floor down here. But there are a bunch of additional options. If I go to the grid submenu, there's another submenu in that, which unfortunately you can't see because the capture window isn't big enough. And that is the object mode grids submenu. And within that is a forward-facing object grid option. So that's what I'm using here. And that creation grid is now snapped onto the coordinate system of the moving object. So I can go and now create a plane right on that construction plane. And let's just go to a wireframe mode here. And you'll see that that grid is following along with the car. we'll look at it in the other views. You can see maybe in the front view there, you can see how that grid moves along with the car as well. So that's the geometry that we want to use to drive the extraction process. It moves along with the car. So we're ready to start with the texture extraction process. We'll tell Synthesize we want to create a texture. We'll use a little car name, and we will make it a 1K by 512 texture, which is probably a little big. The car is really pretty small in the frame. But now we're ready to run the texture extraction process. So it's just whipping through there, figuring out the texture for the car. And now we'll turn back to solid view and hide the selection. And here's our texture. And you notice it's not really the world's most focused sort of looking thing. And we'll go over here to a view of the texture map directly. And you can see that. You know, especially in the front of the car, there's quite a bit of changes here. And that actually reflects the changing shape of the car over the duration of the shot. So there was, in fact, a little bit of change in the car as it moved around. And, you know, there's less of that in the back where the light was that we were using to attach the moving mesh. So something that's kind of clever to do in this situation is to go and tell it that we just want to use a section of these shots, a section of the frame as a basis for the extraction process. So we'll just start here, say, and we'll scrub on through. And there's a little bump there right where the little sign goes in front of the car. So actually, let's just stop it before we hit the sign at all. And so now we're only going to be using this particular range of frames for the extraction process. So let's let that run again. And bam, now you have a much sharper looking image. So you could actually generate this mesh a little more clever if you wanted. You could reorient it a little bit also to reduce the effect of this, but that's subject for another day. Let's think about what we want to do with this texture now. There are three different kind of main options here. One is we could just jump over to an image editing program and start painting away in the alpha and take out this backdrop portion that represents kind of all the stuff that was flying by in the background behind the car. So, you know, we could go in Photoshop and just directly start editing this image. Another option is to do that within Synthesize, and there are some alpha channel editing tools inside of Synthesize. The third option is to use an automatic alpha generating mode inside Synthesize as well that generates an initial approximation of that alpha channel based on how much variability there is in the different portions of the image. So those are three different main options, but we will leave those for another day and just go back and take a look at the situation as a whole, see where we've gotten to. We'll turn our plane back on and here's what we want. And here's the stack up that we have right now with the car driving in front of the backdrop image, so we could start doing additional things to this as we like. So that's what this is about. Enjoy.